Hello and welcome to the TSNN Monthly Webinar Series. I am TSNN President and Editor-in-Chief, Rachel Wimberly. Today we're going to be talking about Internet connectivity, how to stay connected at events with more demand than ever. Today's webinar will be focused on hearing how Smart City and the San Diego Convention Center worked with the International Society of Technology and Education and how the demands were met for their very technology-heavy event. We will have short presentations from Smart City, ISTE, and then San Diego, followed by a Q&A. Please note the hashtag on the webinar is TSNN Webinar, and first we hear from one of our amazing sponsors, Steve Snyder. Steve Snyder is the Chief Information Officer for the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority and Advantage Boston. Steve?
Thank you, Rachel. It's really nice to be able to sponsor this, especially something that's so near and dear to our hearts out here in Boston. With the type of internet service and demand that we're seeing, especially when you have shows like Penny Arcade Expo that come in that start pushing 600 to 800 megasecond wireless, we have to really step up to the plate with the right tools, the right technology. And more often than not, you really have to spend the time and effort to put the right people in play. So once again, it's great to help sponsor this, and I look forward to a good webinar.
Thank you very much, Steve, and we really appreciate your support. And now we'd like to thank our other sponsor, OnStream Media, creators of Marketplace 365. They will continue to help us deliver these educational topics to you. OnStream Media is credited with delivering the first video webcasting and streaming presentations over the Internet in 1993. Nearly 20 years later, the company has grown to now deliver over 8,000 live events per year for over 75% of the Fortune 100 and nearly 50% of Fortune 1,000 companies. The company's latest innovation is Marketplace 365, a leading virtual event and online community platform that is specifically designed for today's trade show organizers, publishers, associations, and enterprise clients. So we really want to give a big thank you to OnStream Media and Steve Snyder from the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority and Advantage Boston. And now we'll get into our webinar. First, I'd like to introduce Smart City Networks, David Langford, VP of Technology there, and I'll have David take it away.
Great, thank you. As was said, I'm Vice President of Technology for Smart City Networks. I'm responsible for all of the technology that we deploy at all of our facilities across the country. I run a network operations center here in Las Vegas and monitor all of those networks. So it's all about connectivity anymore at trade shows, at meetings, and at events. Technology and social media have enabled people's opportunities and desires to connect, especially at conventions and events. Every event anymore has a Twitter feed, has a Facebook page, and is connected through social media in ways that it wasn't connected or shows weren't connected just a few years ago. If we take a look at the state of technology in the meetings industry, specifically for Smart City, when I joined the company in 2001, a majority of the business, 90%, was on telephone installations and payphones. We find now that in 2012, that has reversed almost entirely, and greater than 90% of our business is technology-related. And of that 90%, about 15% is wireless alone, with attendees signing up for Wi-Fi services at the events. In 2002, the amount of bandwidth that we had was barely worth mentioning. In 2008, we had 9.2 gigs across 40 locations. Today, in just 4 years later, we've got 27 gigs of bandwidth, and that's now about 38 facilities. So our bandwidth has just increased and continues to increase year over year. We're adding bandwidth for every event. So by the end of this year, the number of mobile connected devices will exceed the number of people on Earth. That's this year. By 2016, there'll be 10 billion mobile connected devices, or 1.4 devices for each person. For example, we talk about the growth, the speed of change. It took AOL over 9 years to hit 1 million users. Facebook took 9 months. The app Draw Something took 9 days. So the adoption of technology, the adoption of these resources has sped up incredibly. We see that the number of people carrying multiple devices, myself included, I typically, when I go to an event, carry 3 devices. I have an iPhone, I have an iPad, and I bring my laptop typically. We can see here that by 2016, it's estimated that over 25% of mobile users will have 2 or more mobile connected devices that they bring with them everywhere they go. Looking not only at the number of devices, we need to look at the growth of data traffic. If you look at smartphone and tablets on this graph, you'll see that the compound annual growth rate for the next 4 years is expected to be over 100%. So we're going to double every year from now until 2016. And the estimates beyond 2016 are that that will continue or even grow further. So today in the meetings markets, what do show producers, exhibitors, and attendees want? Basically, everybody wants to be connected everywhere they go in any way possible. The show producers want to produce a cutting-edge event. There's apps that they use, social media, and the goal is to extend the buzz of the event beyond the event days. It used to be that people would get excited about the event, head to the event. The buzz was there while the event was on, and then it kind of died off. Now, the goal of the show manager is to use technology and use connectivity to extend the impact of their event. So the buzz starts before the show begins and continues on after the show ends. Exhibitors want to sell more products at a lower cost. And through being connected at the show and having the availability of bandwidth at the event, they are able to increase the return on investment that they have in going to that event. Attendees want to be connected everywhere and everything. So from free Wi-Fi to 3G, 4G availability at these facilities, the demands and expectations of the attendees, which were really in the past overlooked, have become increasingly important. From accessing show schedules to accessing social media about the event, and being connected to the outside world, because while you're at the event, your real life still goes on. So being connected in every way at all times now is an expectation of the attendees. We're looking at connectivity beyond the event to the outside world. So the event is now going to be connected beyond the physical facility. Now, there's been talk for years and years about how technology is going to end the face-to-face meetings industry, and I really disagree with that. I think that it's being accepted and it's being encouraged, again, extending that reach of that event to people who either couldn't attend, weren't sure if they should attend, didn't hear about it in time, all the variety of reasons that an attendee didn't come to the event. Extending that connectivity outside of the physical facility could increase attendance, could increase the scope of the event, and the number of people involved in it. Doing that through webinars, webcasts, satellite broadcasts on the internet. Cloud services are something that is in increasing demand also. So the presentations that are being given, the recordings that are being made of the presentation aren't kept locally. So they depend on that connectivity from the event to provide those services that typically were brought on site. It's also used connectivity to connect the event within the facility. So there may be more than one presentation going on at any one given time that an attendee wants to go to. So they can virtually attend one while physically attending another. Mobile apps, again, are on the increase. It seems like every event has an app of some sort, whether it be a native app on an iPhone or an Android, or if it is a web-based app that is suited for mobile devices. Through social media, attendees are discussing what's going on at these events with a much wider audience than what we've seen in the past. connectivity at the facility gives the ability to extend your reach of your comments about the event beyond just those who you know or that are in the session with you. We're seeing an increase in RFID, lead retrieval, virtual tote bags. We're seeing shows turn green and do mini websites when you express interest in a particular product or a particular exhibit at the facility. We're working with RF technology, near-field communications, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. Everything's everywhere. Wireless connectivity is definitely on the increase, and it's something that we invest in every day. Machine-to-machine connectivity is also important now, whereas it used to be purely a person accessing the Internet or somebody on the Internet accessing a device at the site. We're seeing now machine-to-machine and mobile-to-mobile communications on the increase. So we have to be aware of, when we're planning our services, have to be aware of it may be machine-to-machine connectivity that's required. Enabling connectivity, some of the challenges that we face, primarily quality. Quality service is the expectation, throughput is an expectation, and availability everywhere is an expectation. Some of the hindrances to achieving that quality is interference. As many of you may know, 802.11b and G, which is most common in handheld devices, mobile phones, so that's changing, only has 3 non-overlapping channels, which means there's only 3 different frequencies that you can transmit on that don't interfere with one of the other frequencies. So you can imagine if there's thousands or tens of thousands, as there are at ISTE, of users, that can become a big challenge, is ensuring that you have an interference-free area, and you don't have control a lot of times. Another thing that's increasing is the density of devices, meaning that now that people are bringing 1, 2, 3 devices to an event, the number of devices I have in any given area on the convention floor or in the public spaces of the facility has increased dramatically. So I have to be ready to provide services in a much more dense environment. Another thing we see that provides trouble for us is low-powered radios. Low-power radios are found typically in mobile phones and iPads, Android devices, and tablets. So there's a challenge providing a dense environment with low-power radios. So the entire way that Wi-Fi networks are designed in these facilities has changed dramatically, even in the last 2 or 3 years. There's competing services. There's integrated cellular services, 3G, 4G. The carriers are building DAS, distributed antenna systems, in these facilities now to enhance their services because they have the same challenges that we have in providing a quality service that carriers do. In focusing on that, we also have to think about the cost. We're constantly upgrading, constantly reinvesting back into the network. Every 2 to 3 years, or more frequently, we're reinvesting, redesigning, redeveloping our wireless networks. At Smart City, as well as across the industry, there's a great amount of change in the networks. So how do you deliver quality? Robust networks. We've got to scale for the future. We've got to consider what new technologies may be coming down the pike, and being sure that we're ready to address those technologies and adopt those technologies as soon as they're available, because every type of device, using every type of technology, comes through our facilities. We do oversubscribe bandwidth, and we have to watch that. That's changed over the years. What oversubscription on bandwidth is that you have perhaps more potential demand for bandwidth than what you have in the facility. And that's changed, as I talked about earlier, with the amount of bandwidth demand there is. That has changed. The ratio of oversubscription has gone down, so I have to have more bandwidth available to serve the needs of the subscribers. Customer service options. We've got customized solutions, provide online ordering, and bundle products together. And as I said, the carriers, the cellular carriers, who we work with in a number of our facilities, are providing distributed antenna systems to get those antennas closer to the end user to provide a more quality service. And with that, I will hand it to Danella.
Thank you, David. My name is Danella Ivanyuk. I'm the ISTE Senior Director of Conference Services, and my job with ISTE is to support and oversee the entire conference process. So we're a nonprofit association, 501c3, and our mission is to support teachers as they seek to improve the teaching and learning process using technology. And we bring about 20,000 people together each June in a different part of the country and produce 5 days of live content. We're a full facility user, meaning that we use all of the possible meeting space and all of the possible exposition space in a convention center. In addition to that, we're not only using sort of the meeting rooms, but everywhere becomes a meeting room and a learning space. And we use almost every square inch of public space available in a convention center. And so as you can imagine, when you go back and think about what David was saying about density, we have a huge movement of people throughout all of the spaces of the center in somewhat of an unpredictable way at times. Our audience is very tech savvy. They're very entrepreneurial. They take matters into their own hands. Teachers and educators are fairly used to that in their day-to-day operating environments, and why they may have limitations on their bandwidth use, firewalls, all kinds of acceptable use policies that are in education these days in the U.S. One of the things that's true is that this group is used to doing things themselves, and not only do they think of themselves that way, but they actually show up and do that. We've had some funny stories about how in Denver at the convention center there was an ATM machine that the bank had to keep calling in to come fix their ATM, and it turned out that what was going on was that the attendees were unplugging the ATM to get to the power spot. And so they kind of don't really worry too much about infrastructure. They want things that work, and they want it now. Their connectivity demands are beyond email, so that means that it's not just simply transactional. They're wanting to stream video to each other. They're wanting to stream video and video conference to maybe participants or colleagues of theirs back at home, quote unquote, who can't make it actually to the meeting itself. So they're not relying on us for services like necessarily for streaming of sessions. They're creating their own streams of sessions. And as a result, we're running both wired and wireless networks for the exhibitors, presenters, show management, and attendees. And my colleague Ryan Roberts will address some of the details of that. But essentially, over the years that we've been providing this level of customer experience for our attendees, what we've watched is that our needs to protect our network have changed over time. It used to be enough to just simply have wireless. Then at some point we decided that we had to segment our presenters into a wired environment because we needed to segment their network so that if something happened in the wireless space, it wouldn't affect their ability to present. Now we're seeing actually a return to the presenters wanting some amount of wireless through Apple TV and using Apple TV as a platform to present from, which is creating the need for us to have a wireless attendee environment as well as a wireless presenter environment as well as a hardwired presenter environment. Our sessions, as I mentioned earlier, talking about the sort of the facility space, our sessions are in mixed environments, meaning that we have some things that are traditional meeting rooms where it's a presenter in front of a room of 100 people. There are other times when we have people learning what we call over-the-shoulder learning in our lounge environments that we build out. One of the small secrets, I think, to our recent success and lack of decline in our attendance over time, even in tough markets, has been that essentially we build places for the attendees to learn from each other, and that we're finding that their investment and ownership over their own learning has been a tremendous draw. Our content formats include hands-on labs, remote sessions, so we'll conduct a workshop that only has a remote audience. We do hybrid sessions where we're working with both a remote and a live audience face-to-face. We do workshops. We have bring-your-own-device sessions, which Brian will talk about again, this is the density issue, because we may have a room filled with 150, a single meeting room, 150 to 200 unique devices, all participating, all, in devices of varying different kinds, all participating in the same session. We do traditional lecture, and then, of course, we do General Assembly, which is sort of your keynote space, where we will convene as many as 5,000 participants in the same space. Our responsibility really as the provider of the experience is to facilitate our audience connecting with each other and networking in meaningful ways. So David spoke quite a bit to the evolving technology space. What are people looking for in a face-to-face event when they attend? They're looking for our experiences that our audience is seeking social media access. They want access to resources. And this is, I think, one of the most powerful things for us as providers of professional development to understand, is that people want to be able to, in their session, access the resources about which the presenter is speaking. They want to be downloading handouts. They want to be going to websites. They want to be accessing video after the fact. They may want to access video during the event. As also David mentioned, there's one of the things that we facilitate happening in our lounge environments in public space is that we simulcast some sessions. So it could be live in one meeting room, but the convention centers are so large that somebody can't get from A to B efficiently, and so they will sit in a lounge and watch a session that they might otherwise not have gotten to. And then lastly, and this is a little bit related to social media, is the demand for collaboration and communication. What we're watching in our audience is that they see the real benefit of coming to a meeting like this, coming to meet with their tribe, if you will, is that they're able to work on things together. They're able to make progress and seek their own solutions as a collaborative team with people that they either know, or more importantly and kind of more fun, new people that they meet who are working with the same problems. Our responsibility, because we are a technology-focused event, we are supporting people who are responsible for deploying technology in learning environments. So we're sort of in the position of needing to model best practices in infrastructure architecture. And so we make ourselves available, for example, to answer questions from our participants who are, maybe they're not building an environment for 5 days only, but they are struggling with how to deal with many of the same issues that we are as producers. And then finally, we need to be ensuring that the infrastructure is robust enough to support the exhibitor and content volume. And again, this is going back to David's point, that the demand is so strong that the experience relies now upon the internet connectivity in a way that perhaps it used to be thought of as an extra. Our challenges is that some of our particular challenges as an association or as a user of facilities is that the delivery of all of those responsibilities I went over before, our ability to produce and deliver the product that we're there, that's part of our mission, we are dependent upon facilities to help us. We don't get to control all of the elements of our production. And this is a very, very significant challenge in facilities that maybe don't have the attention and investment that a facility perhaps using a company like Smart City does. It's a part of our decision making with site selection, is can that facility work with us to deliver the product that we need to deliver. One of the challenges is that load testing is impossible until there actually is a load. So we may be coming into a facility 5 days before the conference begins, but we will never know what it's like to have all of our people in one place using that network until they're actually all in one place using that network. And that means that our response time for problem solving needs to be very high. Data tracking is imperative from year to year. Our statistics speak louder than words. I can't tell you how many times we've gone into a facility over the last 20 years when it's really hard to get a facility to understand what the needs really are. We can talk until we're blue in the face, and until they really see it, it's very, very difficult for them to understand what we really mean and that we're really serious. It's really a big deal. Another challenge is that establishing accountable parties is different. So this is because of the myriad dependencies we've got. It's really difficult to say, oh, well, the reason that this network isn't working in this area is because of X. Getting to what the definition of the X is very difficult. Density is unpredictable. We've talked about that chat a little bit. And then finally, technology and people's use of it is always evolving. It's always changing. Trying to stay ahead of the trends is one of the most difficult things we deal with all the time. So to help us with these challenges, our strategy has a couple of different points. The first thing is that we take it as our responsibility. I take it as my personal responsibility as the ultimate producer of the event to ensure that the facility has the information it needs to understand the big picture. And this is where we've had tremendous success working with Smart City, and we've worked in Smart City facilities throughout the country. And we've really seen the benefit in that they're willing. David has facilitated his team meeting with groups like the San Diego Convention Center in advance, but also coming and shadowing our experience at the previous year's conference. So visiting that event so that they can watch and work with their Smart City partners there to really see what the challenges are, and they can see where that accountability is. They can watch how the development of the event and people's use of it is changing, and how the company itself is responding. This is a really big one. Providing statistics. Our team doesn't just rely on the facilities in-house team to provide those stats. We track them ourselves year after year and hold 2 to 3 pre-event on-sites, meaning that as we're preparing for our conference to happen, we are meeting as many as 3 times with that staff face-to-face on-site, digging through closets, looking at the infrastructure, discussing their bandwidth, discussing what product equipment changes might be happening for them over the year, helping to drive their investments in new technologies to keep up with the pace so that everyone's successful in the end. And then you're going to hear from my colleague Ryan Roberts in just a slide where he's been with us. He's going to talk about the stats, but he's been with us for multiple years, architecting our network, working as a team with the in-house facility team. And this makes a big difference to us because it means, A, I don't have to do it, or no one from my immediate staff has to do it, but that it's his responsibility to make sure, no pressure, Ryan, to make sure that we are, that those stats do get translated, that those stats do get transferred from year to year, and that he's able to pass along his knowledge to the facility in a way that that might not happen otherwise. We educate our audience on best practices. David referred to the number of unique devices that people are carrying around with them these days. A couple of years ago, we watched our unique devices on the wireless network stats double from year to year. And the reason was that we went from a social environment where people were holding one device, which was usually a laptop, to coming into a space with an iPad, an iPhone, and a laptop. And at that point in time, we knew just from watching, and because the technology was so new to people, it was just because you can have them on all the time doesn't mean you should have them on all the time. And so we've spent a bunch of time with our audience helping to educate them about the fact that they're yes, we're providing these services, but it's a shared resource environment, and that they have a role in helping us to be successful. We also have on-site tech support to help people with their devices if they're having trouble, so that we're not just reading about it as tweets. That we have a crummy network. We actually invite and encourage them to go meet with our tech support, who can help them set their parameters on their machines and actually help them understand when to turn things off and when to turn things back on. And then finally, we're anticipating trends. Really working hard to keep ourselves participating in this kind of a webinar as much as possible. This is a learning experience for me as much as it is for those of you who have chimed in or who have tuned in to learn something new today. We're always learning, always looking at the new technology out there in the marketplace, reading the futurists and the visionary thinking about where technology is heading. We don't just leave that to the tech experts. We've had to, as an association and as a conference staff, had to become, in a way, experts ourselves. So it's a big job. We take it very seriously. It's a huge part of what our audience looks to us to be on top of and deliver. Our network architect, Ryan Roberts, is now going to speak a little bit to the geek speak here and talk some more specifics about how we build our network. So, Ryan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Donella. As Donella said, my name is Ryan Roberts. I'm the network architect for the ISTE conference every year, and I think my most important role, and Donella touched on it a little bit, is to set expectations with each conference center as we move around. Technology changes every year so much, and it's important that we be well out in front. So our event is at the end of June every year, and we start meeting with the conference center in person the October before. And one of the big discussions is to talk about infrastructure and to show those stats that Donella mentioned and to explain to them this is the type of network that we saw this past year, and based on our trending, we know it's going to increase by probably 10 or 15, maybe 20%, and to help them start preparing by capital expenditure on infrastructure and those kind of things. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about kind of what the objectives are of the network are from a geek standpoint. Proud to call myself a geek and to talk a little bit about that with you now. So one of the biggest challenges for anybody in a conference environment is the idea that you don't get to build this thing over months and months, despite the size and caliber of network you have to put in. If we're lucky, we have 7 days, and oftentimes we're getting spaces down to the last day, and even half a day sometimes. So it's very important that we're prepared for that, and that's why we have so many meetings and so much documentation and a logistics team to help us understand when we're getting spaces and how best to deploy this and when those spaces are going to be occupied, and then working with the on-site labor and staff to make sure that the rooms are ready in the correct order. Our network is wide open. So we are, as Donella mentioned, we provide a wireless network that is the conference center wide from wall to wall, save the trade show floor, and it's no password. So that's a bit nerve-wracking for the lead of the network to know that just anybody can sit down with any device and connect, but that's what our attendees need to have a successful event. They need to be able to connect wherever they are, as Dave mentioned. Connectivity is critical. It's the backbone of their experience at ISTE every year. So we kind of pride ourselves on having that open network, gives them a nice, fast connection, no password. It's easy to connect all your devices. We provide, because the network is so big, and we have not only all of our attendees visit, but some of our attendees pay additional fees to go into special bring-your-own-device sessions. We have people that video conference and need special networks to handle that. So we find a lot of value and security in segmenting our networks via VLANing and firewalling and routing to make sure that we can dedicate services to everyone that attends, but give a higher level, a higher SLA to those that are paying even an additional fee to go to a BYOD session, to go to a special workshop. Of course, our presenters are the ones standing at the front of the stage, and nothing's more awkward for them than to be presenting to 500 people and have the internet go out. So we like to make sure that they have a nice, stable connection. In the past, we've insisted on wired. As many of you probably know, that's becoming more and more challenging, especially with netbooks and MacBook Airs, and they may not necessarily have an Ethernet connection. And the introduction of that great technology, AirPlay, air mirroring, which is really making the presentation more interactive, which is exactly what our attendees want. So every year the challenges are great, and we have to adapt our networks to make sure that we are giving everyone that attends, presenters, sponsors, everyone that solid network experience that they want and that they're coming to expect now. As I mentioned, we segregate and make the network as resilient as we can to ensure maximum uptime. Some of that segmentation comes down to ensuring that if someone brings something onto the network, a virus or something like that, that it doesn't impact all of our attendees or even a segment of our attendees. So we lock down peer-to-peer communication to a certain extent on our open networks to make sure that if my laptop has a virus, it can infect all the other computers that might be on that network. We have a general session that has over 5,000 attendees in it at one time, which makes densities obviously a big concern for us. And the challenges are great there because to get 5,000 people in a room, it has to be a really big room. You have to figure out how you're going to place access points for coverage that's going to give them a good wireless experience, but not not affect the production. So how do you place access points among 5,000 people and to give them that coverage, but not cause problems? So that's always an engineering challenge every year. And I should mention that I think it was mentioned earlier. We move from conference center to conference center every year, so it's not always the same spaces, and those have a great effect, especially on wireless. One room might be all glass. The densities are different here, the makeup of the walls. So from year to year, it's always a great challenge to make sure that connectivity is there. And the way that we always have a best guess based on years past, even if we've been in that facility before. But at the end of the day, because the biggest variable is where our attendees decide to hang out, we are prepared with augmentation. We actually have access points ready to deploy anywhere within the facility, and we are constantly monitoring, both technically monitoring and monitoring via help desk, via Twitter, to find out where those densities have sparked up, where maybe access points are being overloaded, so that then we can go in and augment further. I describe it, sometimes the attendees, the common areas will look like a airline terminal when all the planes have been canceled. I mean, they will just camp out and sit. Maybe they're waiting for a session. Maybe they broke out into their own session and they're collaborating. And next thing you know, you've got 20, 30 people sitting in an area that was just a transitional space before. So it's always a unique challenge to be prepared to augment for that. So now into the good geeky stuff. I'm going to talk a little bit about the network infrastructure, the hardware we use. Our core, the switching infrastructure is Cisco almost entirely for distribution and for wireless as well. This year we used MikroTik hardware on the edge for routing and for that per user rate limiting. So each of on our open wireless network to keep any one person from taking out all of the bandwidth, we rate limit every connection. So each person gets, every year that grows, but this year it was about 1.25 down and about 1 meg up on each wireless connection on an open wireless, and the MikroTik helped us to do that. Give you some quantitative numbers to help you understand the scope. It's about 531 total wire drops in the facility, 35 different VLANs. Again, segmenting out all of those different areas to make sure that we can dedicate and make sure that services are rendered to each of those different networks. 8 different wireless IDs, 241 dual band wireless access points. For the other geeks out there, you all know that's each access point's carrying 2 radios, so 482 radios, 1 gig primary internet connection, and because the internet is critical to the success of the event, this year we brought in a 2 gig backup internet connection temporarily in case the primary went down, which it didn't. And again, per VLAN and per wireless connection rate limiting. Next slide, please. And so to wrap it up, to give you an idea of the usage, this year we saw a peak of over 6,400 concurrent wireless devices, over 400 meg of peak bandwidth. That's a 40 meg increase over 2011, which was about a 40 meg increase over 2010. And what's interesting about that, as both Dave and Danella mentioned, is that these folks come in, if you're going to have 1,000 people in the room, we budget between 1.5 and 2.5 concurrently connected devices. So 1,000 people in a room, you got to plan for about 2,000 devices, give or take. And they're all using bandwidth. And these attendees, they're using those devices, they're simultaneously using up bandwidth. They're not just kind of lying dormant. And then again, the conference bandwidth average was on the 95th percentile, was 230 meg down. So this isn't, we're not spiking. This is a constant use from 8 o'clock in the morning when the doors open to 7 o'clock at night. They are drinking up the bandwidth. So, and just to throw in a graph, this is kind of shows you over the days. There's a soft open Saturday and Sunday. Monday is that first big spike you can see of bandwidth. Tuesday is the busiest day, and Wednesday, just to kind of show you graphically the kind of bandwidth we're using. And so now I'm going to pass it over to back to Danella, and she's going to talk about recommendations.
So thanks, Ryan. I think that what we can see and what that graph really shows, that's the kind of data that we really need to be able to provide as show organizers to our facility partners. So the first recommendation is know thy data. Collect it, share it, understand it yourself as much as you need to be a good communicator of the data. Again, I think a lot of, over time, show organizers have not felt that it's, sort of our responsibility to understand this nitty-gritty. But the same way that even though we may hire specific meeting planners to handle our food and beverage counts, we know that counts need to be done. The same responsibility is there with our internet. We may not have to be the ones doing the counting of all those sodas, but we better darn well know that's a necessary task to get done. So know thy data. The second thing is know thy audience. Stay up on their devices, their needs and their usage plans. Do pre-conference surveys. Ask them what devices they're planning to bring. What devices do they depend on? What platforms are they using? Find that out about your audience. It's going to help you know so much more about and predict what's going to happen on site. I mean, I think you've heard that from both Ryan and myself, is that the unpredictability is one of the things that's the most difficult. And with a temporary installation, we have to be as prepared as we can be to respond to the unknown. And so we try to get the unknown to a minimum. The early bird gets the worm, for sure. Plan ahead. Do not hesitate. Do not say, oh, well, they would be asking us if it was important. Take responsibility for this one and set up those meetings in advance. Talk to your convention centers years before, at the point of booking. If you're a huge event, talk at the time, talk before you even agree to book a space. Meet with the general manager, meet with their technology staff, ask questions about how their contracting works with their technology in-house providers. Do that homework so that everybody's on red alert and has a high level of awareness that this is important to you. The next point is a little bit related to that, which is establish accountability. Whenever we have a service, we don't ever like to think about what's going to happen if it doesn't go right. But if you're depending on this, on the quality of this experience for your attendees, it's not the convention center, nor is it the in-house AV or internet provider who's going to get dinged if it's a bad scene. It's going to be you. It's going to be your association brand, and it's you who's going to be sitting there with egg on your face. It's your organization that's going to be suffering, and it's your future sales that you may lose if that experience isn't what people expected. So make sure that roles are clear. Make sure that you're able to circle back to your provider and hold them accountable if they haven't done the job that you've set them up to do. It's very, very important that you have that clear so that in the moment when emotions are high and the clock is ticking, you're not having to rewind to that. Avoid financial surprises. Agree on the money parameters first. Make sure that it's clear to your provider what those costs look like. Nobody wants to be sitting there at the end of the conference when you get your final bill, yourself and the facility included, having to negotiate and discuss why maybe it's 50% more than you expected because you're being charged for bandwidth that's had to burst due to your audience's use, or that in the moment you needed to deploy X number of more access points. Make sure that you've established those parameters in advance. And then finally, never forget it's live. It's much better to be prepared for an in-the-moment response by having those access points on hand, for having backup plans A, B, and C, than to plan for perfection. This is an environment that we all work in where perfection is a goal, not a status, and we're never going to be able to do it to judge everything exactly correctly. And the best thing, I believe, and that Ryan and I have discussed, and that I think that all of us who are working in the live event space understand, is that we've just got to be prepared for the inevitable, which is usually something we don't know. So with that, we'll invite your questions, I guess, to be addressed at the end. And I'm going to pass over to my colleague Lydia Ochoa from the San Diego Convention Center.
Thank you, Donella.
Take it away. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Donella. Lydia Ochoa here. I'm the Senior Event Manager for the San Diego Convention Center. I had the privilege of working with ISTE for a little bit over a year in preparation for their conference here this year. I have to say that my first opportunity at getting to go to Philadelphia to see the 2011 program and just to gain a better understanding of the magnitude of the event was just priceless. I was able to observe show management's primary needs and expectations, along with what the attendees were looking for. I knew that the event itself was going to fit in our facility, but assuring we were amply prepared for this event was what I returned to San Diego with as a goal. I took the time and returned back and met with all of our on-site vendors and partners and management and discussed what I observed. I went through and talked a little bit about what we would possibly need to enhance, what, if anything, we would need to procure as a part of preparing for what we were expecting to see in about 20,000 guests in the facility. So as we move forward, the partners and I discussed and fortunately had ISTE show management on site, and we took the time to review not just what they had held in the facility in 2006, but also, looking at their history, I clearly recognized the growth, not just in their numbers, but the devices, of course, as mentioned by David, that the individuals would be bringing with them in the number of devices. Clearly, the demand and the expectation for the center's technology is something that we needed to be ready for. At one point in Philadelphia, I contacted Julia Slocum, our Smart City Regional Director, to immediately flag her on what my observations were and what we would be expecting. Her assurance that she, too, had been looking ahead and reaching out to previous year providers and properties, for information, reassured me that we as a team would do everything necessary to be prepared. Welcoming show management into the building for site visits is always another eye-opening experience for the event. With ISTE, we held more than normal, primarily because of the extensive planning, as I mentioned, necessary to determine the 2.5 million square feet of facility. We determined what would work best where, and it's during this time that we also broke down the key areas needed in advance to help augment the installation for Smart City of all the services. We worked closely with a new service contractor to our facility next show to gain early access into critical areas which would give them the opportunity to mark the floor and thus giving us definition as to where the service installations needed to go. We knew critical areas like the network operations room, which is where Ryan was going to be one of the first areas we would need to set up, and certainly set that as a priority. We had some challenges to overcome with this because they did have a staggered move-in into different locations, different exhibit halls, and into our ballroom areas. And we had to work closely out those details to gain those necessary access areas with other events that were in the facility. During the site visits, we also began to build a partnership with the numerous additional ISTE vendors. Ultimately, we concluded every visit. It was our team's goal, really, to gather all the possible details for this event, but it was also our opportunity to create an atmosphere of trust and assurance to our clients. We strive to give them the comfort level of feeling that we are truly an extension of their staff and we're working towards a common goal. The technical readiness. It goes without saying that we have a great facility, but it's because of the partnership we have with our on-site vendors like Smart City, as part of contractual obligation, maintain the infrastructure and provide upgrades and augment when deemed necessary that ultimately provides a positive result for clients. Smart City's technical teams, availability for all the site visits and the countless conference calls with Ryan and Donella and Nancy, and just the general communication with ISTE for every single necessity they had was just phenomenal, in my opinion. The installation of 18,650 feet of network cable for just show management installs into areas like the general session, the bring your own devices rooms, as Donella mentioned, the sponsor rooms, the playground areas, the ISTE store and bloggers area was just amazing. In addition to the close monitoring of the Wi-Fi usage for over 6,400 simultaneous users and the increase of bandwidth from the estimated 280 megs of bandwidth used in Philadelphia to approximately 320 megs of bandwidth used in San Diego is just a piece of what they manage. A service never introduced into the building, Internet 2, was installed. This service not previously existent in our center, as it is designed and controlled for educational locations only, required considerable logistical planning, taking over 6 months of proper documentation for approval and utilization. On top of the install and connectivity was another challenge we experienced. Lastly, the redundancy plan was to take the services to over double 500 megs of bandwidth was available to assure the accommodation to ISTE. The commitment didn't stop here. Smart City was proactive and coordinated a redundancy of 2 gigs of backup from a separate provider. Having identified to the best of our abilities based on all the communications, site visits, and previewing the show in 2011, the final details are just all ironed out. All participants submit their specs, and we create a 360-degree look at. We refer to it on site as our event document. It's what all staff and building partners go to find an answer of who, what, where, how, and when things are occurring for the show. We efficiently define where we can get into the key spots for setup, for testing, and for modifications if necessary. Along the road to this execution, policies, rules, and regulations, of course, are communicated to all parties involved. We confirm that all the drawings for every space in the building have been approved after the initial floor plan has been submitted to Fire Marshal for approval. With the sheer quantity of cabling, as you can imagine, that was installed, it was essential that the Fire Marshal had a comfort level that the quantity of networking runs did not impact egress. Having the Fire Marshal approved floor plans in hand when he inspects the building eliminates misunderstandings. Many times initial drawings, as you know, are reviewed and they are having to be cleaned up and redefined and then resubmitted, and so therefore having those final plans in hand is always a benefit. I will say that observing the technology and demands brought to us by ISTE certainly educated me, and we certainly look forward to clients bringing these extensive types of technology shows to the facility in the future. At the San Diego Convention Center, we are able to offer this ultimate partnership for success because of the team we have. From the staff and the on-site contractors and, of course, our local labor, we gather together to make up the San Diego spirit. So thank you for this opportunity. And again, ISTE, it was just wonderful having you on site, and we look forward to having you back, Donella Ryan. And David, your Smart City team on site is just fabulous. So I thank you all. And at this point, I think I'm turning it back over to Rachel.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, everybody. That was great. It was a ton of information. Obviously, we don't have much time left because there was just so much great information there. But we have had some questions come in. So if I direct a question to you, just remember to pop off your mute and go ahead and answer. Donella, one question that came in that I think that would be good for you all to answer are, what are some of the things managers include in their network fact document for their audience?
Well, actually, one of the things that we do is just really, in schools these days, and we're very, very lucky about this, in schools, there's a lot about sort of the conversation about social responsibility. What does it mean to be working together using shared resources? Everybody knows that, you're supposed to share your pencils, you're supposed to share your, your scissors, but they also nowadays are talking a lot about how to share a network. And so one of the things we just simply tell people is turn off your stuff when you're not using it. Just like we'd say, turn off your lights in a room that you've left. If you're not using your phone, turn off the wireless speaking. If you are, if you're going into a room where you're going to be using your laptop, turn off your pad and your phone. If you're, so that it's not just constantly pinging the network. So we just make sure that they understand the implications of their actions. One of the other things that we talk a lot about is power, which isn't necessarily about an electricity, not necessarily about the sort of the network itself, but how do you show up on site ready to learn? Are your pencils sharpened? Quota is now become, is your laptop charged? Is your phone charged? Is your iPad charged? So that you're not, again, having to seek for unplugging the ATM to make sure that your machine is ready for your next class or your next learning opportunity. So those are the kinds of things that we talk about in that. And I'm not sure how we would ever distribute something like that to this group, but you're more than willing or more than able to go to our website which is www.isticonference.org, and take a look at our roles and social responsibility guidelines.
Great. Thank you so much, Donella. Another question we have, I believe would be good for David, is how do you predict, into the future what kind of technology needs are going to be and make sure that the infrastructure is in place?
Yeah, I think that's a real good question. It's something that we participate in. We're members of IEEE. Pay attention to, particularly when it comes to wireless, what technologies are coming down the road, what manufacturers are adopting, and where their development is going into. There's a new standard going to be probably. It's been proposed and it's probably going to be accepted this year. It's called 802.11ac, and will allow for faster Wi-Fi than before, but does create some technical problems for us potentially. So, bringing those things into a lab environment, finding a facility and an event that is willing to work with us a little bit and test out some of these new technologies that are coming down the road always helps. And just planning for the future. For example, when I design a network or design an infrastructure, when there's fiber to be pulled, for example, if I think I need 12 strands of fiber, well, I'll go ahead and pull 24 while I'm there. Because the material cost when you're installing this infrastructure, the materials cost is only a small component. It's the labor that's the biggest part. So, I say bandwidth is like basements. You can never have too much. I can remember moving into a house and thinking, how on earth am I going to use all of this space? And 10 years later, when I go to move out, it's completely full. And I think that's what we're seeing here, and kind of what we have to be prepared for. There's an interesting statistic I read recently, which says that last year's mobile data traffic, not all the traffic, just the mobile data traffic, was 8 times the size of the entire global internet in 2000. So just the mobile component transmitted more last year than the entire internet by 8 times was in 2000. So we can see how growth is occurring. So I think a lot of forethought needs to be put into infrastructures when you're building these. When I build a physical infrastructure, I'm looking to get 15 to 20 to 25 years out of that physical infrastructure. So we really have to think ahead and be on your feet and work with shows like ISTE who really push us for technology to talk about what their demands in the future are going to be.
Great. And, this is Donella. I want to chime in just a little bit to add to what David said. I think that as show organizers, one of our key responsibilities is to be sure that we are talking with facilities to find out what their plan is for that kind of a thing. So you don't even want to book a place that isn't thinking the way that David's talking about needing to think.
Great. And Donella, you actually just answered the next question. So, and I know that we've gone a little bit over. I want to thank everybody very much for their time, and we've run out of time, especially the presenters today and all your hard work in putting this together. We very much appreciate it. We also want to thank our incredible sponsors, Massachusetts Convention Center Authority, Advantage Boston. Thank you to Steve Snyder, and also thank you to OnStream Media Marketplace 365. Archive of this presentation will be available in just a few days on www.tsnn.com/webinars, and we'll make sure that everybody gets a message from us as well with a link to that. And thank you very much again for all of your time. And if you have any more questions at all, you can also send them to me, and I'll make sure they go to the correct person. My email is rwimberly, WIMBERLY, @tsnn.com. Thank you again, and have a great day.